Okay, Lynn, you ready to get going? All right, well, Glenn's here again to give us another presentation. And this one is Moms Have Your Babies at Home. And let's see why.
All right. Well, we're live on YouTube, folks. So
You're live on YouTube.
this is actually, well, so are you, actually. But anyways, this is one I did a YouTube video on, but I made a bunch of changes to the presentation. And so and then with the live audience, there's always possibilities of interactions and stuff like that. So this one's called Moms, Please Have Your Babies at Home. And so there's in the law, children there's all sorts of international treaties and stuff over children. So I got to say, I don't have any children. There's such a thing as a child corporation, believe it or not. And so they just presume that it's one of their slaves, okay? Because this is all about the minor estate. We're going to talk about that. I do have 3 sons and 2 daughters. And we'll talk a little bit about those. And 1 son and 1 daughter were born at home. But I always told my wife that having babies was her department, okay? I'm not gonna, I told her, you know, I would, if we can, if it's something you feel comfortable with, then, you know, then I certainly would applaud if you can have a baby at home, but I don't want to risk your health. I don't want to risk any complications. If you don't feel absolutely comfortable with it, then, you know, well, I'll do whatever you want to do. And so what happened is my 3rd son was born at home in Phoenix. And then my 2nd daughter was born at home in Toronto, Ontario, Uxbridge, Ontario, actually. You know, I still remember my daughter being born, and this was in a hospital in California. And the doctor had told my wife that in the delivery room the lights are real bright, and so if you put your hands over the baby's eyes, then she'll open her eyes up. And I still remember my daughter. My wife did that, and she opens her eyes up and starts looking around, and that was, after that, she had me wrapped around her finger, tell you. And I got to tell you, before my daughter was born, you know, somebody could put a baby in my hands, and I'd say, well, gee, that's real nice, and give it back real quick before it spits up on me or something. So my daughter turned my world upside down, for sure, and it was a good way. Then my son was born in Arizona, and he was the first home birth. My wife went and did some research, talked to some of her friends and stuff in Arizona, and there was a midwife in Arizona. She'd actually been in the newspaper, in the Arizona Republic newspaper, which is the big newspaper there. They'd written whole big center page articles on her. She was a midwife. She was had delivered hundreds of babies. So my wife, we hired her, and with the midwives, they always have a hospital as a backup. So they said, well, you're going to have to go meet this doctor, and he's got to approve you having a baby at home, and the hospital is going to be a backup. And if anything happens, it's not negotiable. The ambulance is coming, and you're going to the hospital. And so she knew that right up front. We all knew it. And nothing happened. My wife was kind of interesting because what happened, I was working swing shift at the time. I was working on airplanes. So I came home, around midnight. And so we went to bed like normal. And about 4 o'clock in the morning, my wife nudges me and says, I think my water broke. So she called the midwives. There was actually the midwife that was well known, and there was one in training. So they both came. And my son was born, probably about 2 hours later. It was like about 6 or 7 o'clock in the morning. And it was interesting because then the midwives left and we all went back to bed. And so what happened is then we had to get up in the morning, and we got up, and my wife needed to go get some herbs, for healing and things like that. And so we went down to this health food store, and Wilson is my son then, had him in her arms, and she's telling the lady there, oh, I just had him last night. And so they were like shocked and amazed. But my wife, she'd have a baby, and like the next day, she had her girlish figure back, just like that. I'm telling you, there was no baby fat or nothing. She always amazed me because of that. Anyways, so that's my son being born. And then my next one was my daughter. We were on Uxbridge, Ontario. And Ontario's interesting. They have the communist socialized medicine in Canada, right? And it saves the government money if you have your babies at home. And so they actually pay for the midwife. They're glad if you want to get a midwife, no problem. The government will pay for it. And the midwives are highly trained. And so same rules. We have a doctor and a hospital as a backup, and it's not negotiable. If we call the ambulance, you're going to the hospital. So, and it went, she started going into labor, and I think it was quite long, the labor this time. I remember that they let her have the labor in the bathtub. They filled the bathtub up with warm water, and it was a lot easier for her having the labor in the bathtub. And so then, when she was ready, they said, well, you're ready to give birth now. You want to do it here in the bathtub, or we can go into your bedroom and do it in there. And she said, well, we'll go in the bedroom. So they went in the bedroom, and my daughter was born. And it was kind of interesting because, they have the socialized medicine in Canada, so a lot of towns don't have a hospital. The government decides where the hospitals are going to be located based on population and all of that stuff. And so we were in a town that didn't have a hospital. And so my daughter was born about 9 o'clock at night on New Year's Day. And so she was a New Year's baby. And all the local merchants were giving her all sorts of stuff. It was kind of interesting. And so it was again, that was no problem at all. And she didn't have to go to the hospital or anything, but I always told her, this is your department. So whatever you want to do, you do. And then my son, by the time my son was born, my wife was in her 40s. And so she was concerned about complications and stuff. And we had health care. I was working at U.S. Airways at the time. And so she said, well, she wanted to have the baby in the hospital. So I still remember, my wife is really straight-laced. She never did drugs. She didn't drink. She didn't smoke, didn't do any of that stuff. I don't drink or smoke, don't do drugs. And so anyways, she was in there, and it was, the contractions get to be a bit much. And she says, I think I'm going to ask the nurses for something to take the edge off of this pain. And I said, do whatever you need to do. And so the nurses gave her some Demerol. And my wife says to me, she says, man, are these drugs ever good? She'd never had drugs like that. I don't know. Maybe they gave her too much or something. I don't know. But she wasn't feeling any pain. Let me tell you that. So I was sitting there in her room. We had a room, and I was sitting in the corner, and she was on the bed, and I was kind of like off in the corner, away from everything. And all of a sudden, my son Hunter's head pops out, and he watched the nurses go into panic mode. Obviously, the baby, my son, wasn't born in a delivery room. He was born right then and there. The nurses, he was born. Anyways, yeah, they went in panic mode, and they had the doctor there real quick, and my son was born. So, anyways, and we're going to go through what I did over the years. My first daughter was born in '86. So, I was in various levels of learning about all of this stuff that I know about now. And my son, I knew a little bit more, but I still don't know the stuff I know now. So we're doing different things at different times. My daughter that was born in Ontario, they gave us the paperwork. This midwife that worked for the government gave us the paperwork for the registration of the birth. But we didn't have to send it in if we didn't want to. She told us you can do with it what you want. And so I thought that was very interesting. So anyways, that's all of that. First of all, I'm not a liar. Well, I meant a lawyer. No, I meant a liar. You should never take my word for anything. You should always do your own research. I provided references to aid you in your research, but I don't know everything, and I'm open to any ideas. There's 4 types of people you'll meet in your life. There's the people who try to wake up the slaves. There's the slave masters. There's the people who have no idea they're slaves. And there's the people who like being slaves. Which one are you? Do you really know for sure? Are you who you think you are? And that's, somebody was saying here earlier that people don't know who they are. And they really don't. They really don't. If you can see through the illusion, then you are the solution. And everything is an illusion. If the people don't know their basic rights and freedoms, how can they know when or if their rights and freedoms are being infringed? And I see it happen all the time in this court work that I do. People aren't asserting their rights. And if there's any place you're going to get your rights violated, it's in these so-called courts. And so you have to assert your rights. And if you don't assert them, you lose them. And they'll be glad to let you lose them. Never forget the men who started this country were marijuana growing, whiskey drinking, taxi evading rebels who left their beds at night to shoot at the cops. And that's true. Let's think about it. That's what they did. Matter of fact, I've got YouTube videos about the militia. And if you think about it, the militia started the War of Independence. Okay? That's who started it. They were going out, these guys here were going out engaging the British. Okay, that's what they were doing. In other words, they were hunting them down and killing them. And so they had enough. All tyranny needs to gain a foothold is for people of good conscience to remain silent. I don't trust the government. I don't trust the medical, pharmaceutical, industrial complex. I don't trust the military industrial complex. I don't trust the mainstream media. I don't trust the bankster criminal cabal that owns the government, owns the medical, pharmaceutical, industrial complex, owns the military industrial complex, and owns the mainstream media. And if you call me a conspiracy theorist, I don't trust you. Government is not reason, it's not eloquence, it is force. Like fire, it's a dangerous servant and a fearful master. And I just want to check the... No, I'm not getting any chat yet. Okay. So if you go to Title 31 of the Code of Federal Regulations, Section 363.6, it's a definition section, but it says volumes. It says, first of all, it says a lot more than this. I just took 2 paragraphs out of it. That's all I did. It says a minor means an individual under the age of 18 years. The term minor is also used to refer to an individual who has attained the age of 18 years, but has not yet taken control of the securities contained in his or her minor account. So I guess that's why that they spell our name in all block capital letters, is because we're a minor. And an entity, listen to this, an entity means any owner of a Treasury Direct account that's not an individual. An entity is a sole proprietorship, partnership, corporation, limited liability company, or professional limited liability company, trust, the estate of a decedent, or the estate of a living person, such as an incompetent or a minor. So where that's important is that brings in the Commerce Clause, okay? So they're using the Commerce Clause, they're bringing the District of Columbia outside a 10-mile square under those regulations, okay? That's a felony, by the way. That's why I filed felony criminal complaints against them, because that's color of law. Any regulation is color of law. There's no regulations law. They're color of law. There's something that looks like law, acts like law, but it's not law. So what this says, okay, if you think about it, is there's a minor estate created at birth by the hospital. The hospital, when you're born, that hospital creates securities. And it's not the birth certificate. The reason I know it's not the birth certificate is if you go to the Treasury website and do a search for birth certificate, they come up with a whole page that says that people are saying that the birth certificate's a security, and it's not. Okay, so it's something else. The securities are deposited into a Treasury Direct account with the International Monetary Fund. Okay, you know that the Treasury is the International Monetary Fund, right? So it's all UN, okay? This is all the UN. The International Monetary Fund is an agency of the World Bank. This is Title 15, United States Code, Section 77B, about securities. The term security means it's an evidence of indebtedness, okay? That's what a security is. So you're a slave, okay? They're selling you into slavery, okay? That's exactly anything under the Commerce Clause is property, okay? That's what a slave is. A slave is considered property, and that's why he's a slave. You're forced to work for the government for nothing. That's what the income tax is. That's what all these taxes are. You're forced to work for the government for nothing, and that's all slavery. And so this will give you ideas on the felony criminal complaints I started filing against them. Okay. This is 18 U.S.C. 1001. Except as otherwise provided in this section, whoever in any matter within the jurisdiction of the executive, legislation, or judicial branch of the government of the United States knowingly and willfully falsifies, conceals, covers up by any trick, scheme, device, a material fact, makes any materially false, fictitious, or fraudulent statement or representation, makes or uses any false writing or document knowing the same to contain any materially false, fictitious, or fraudulent statement or entry. So it's a fraud under 18 U.S.C. 1001. A person, this is in Texas Government Code. A person means an individual, partnership, corporation, association, government subdivision, or public organization that is not a state agency. Okay? So the individual is the minor estate. Okay? You have to understand these are all under maximum law called a justum generis. And when they have a definition section and they list a bunch of fictitious entities, then they're all fictitious entities. Okay? So the individual is the minor estate. This is Article 4, Section 3, Clause 2 of the Constitution. The Congress shall have power to dispose of and make all needful rules and regulations respecting territory or other property. So regulations are for property of the United States. So they create the security. It is owned by the United States. That's who owns it. That's why it falls under the regulations. This is where it comes from in the D.C. Code, the Code of Law for the District of Columbia, located at 31 Stat 1432, says the legal estate to be an necessitate use. Okay, a use is short for usufruct. which is Roman law. And the Strong's Concordance, Pharmakeia. Okay, so these are sorcerers. These are Satanists that are doing this. Okay, it's fake money. That's satanic, just by definition. Fake money is satanic. Anything that's fake is satanic. But it's also, they're sorcerers. Okay, Pharmakeia is sorcery. That's the Greek derivative of the word sorcerer is pharmakeia. And so, hey, Sonny, don't look depressed. Here, take some Prozac. You're hyperactive. You need Ritalin. Take this, take that. It's okay. I'm a doctor. And they're all drug pushers is what they are. Okay? They're drug pushers. That's what this fake pandemic that went on and their forced medical experiment. And I file war crimes complaints against them for a forced medical experiment. There's a friend of mine, his wife was a nurse at the MD Anderson Cancer Center in Houston, Texas. She gets an email one day, prepare to take the jab or prepare to be terminated. So I went and did a quick search online. The MD Anderson Cancer Center is owned by the University of Texas. The University of Texas has a board of regents, and the board of regents has 3 lawyers on it and a chief counsel. And the lawyers are always the low-hanging fruit. Okay, they're deemed to know the law. That email wouldn't have been sent out except that it went past some lawyers. So I filed 4 criminal complaints against each of those lawyers. One of them for violating her rights under the color of law. The second one was for conspiracy to threaten, coerce, injure, intimidate her in the free exercise of her right to ignore their color of law. And the third one was for subjecting her to their satanic religious ceremony with their fear agenda. And their what they were doing is they were offering a religious exemption, and then you had to fill out a questionnaire. And that's a war crime. So the fourth one was for war crimes, because they're coercing information from you. It's none of their business what her religious beliefs are. And so there was the war crime was for forced medical experiments and they're forced coercing information from her. Anyways, 2 weeks after I filed, I sent one to the FBI, I sent one to the Provost Marshal General in Washington, D.C., and I sent one to the state police. 2 weeks after I sent that stuff out, she gets an email. She'd been granted a religious exemption. She hadn't even applied for religious exemption. And they told everybody else what they were doing is everybody that had applied had filled out this questionnaire, and they'd been denying everybody. And it's none of their business what your religious exemption, what your religious beliefs are. So they went and told everybody that had previously applied for a religious exemption to reapply. And then about a week later, they came out and said, if you want to take it, you can, otherwise don't worry about it. So anyways, you got to understand, we're under martial law, have been for decades. And if you don't complain, nothing's going to change. Okay, so you have to complain. You have to use the words in their codes. And when you do that, they have to follow their codes. And our public servants will go out there. They'll never tell me. They never, ever tell me what happens. But it's amazing how many times stuff like that happens. It's amazing. Somebody goes and looks them up and they talk about it. This is Malachi 3 and 5. I will come near to you in judgment. I will be a swift witness against the sorcerers. Okay, the drug pushers wearing the white lab coats. And then it says in Revelations 21 and 8, but the fearful and the unbelieving and the abominable and murderers and whoremongers and sorcerers and all liars shall have their part in the lake which burneth with fire and brimstone. So the sorcerers and the liars and the fearful, okay? The Bible says fear not. So why do we let them tell us what to do with their fear agenda? Okay? Screw you. Anyways, I'm preaching to the choir here. I know most of the people, I don't think anybody here took that jab, but most of the brain dead idiots, I remember being down here, and there was a lineup for like 2 miles of cars waiting to go and get the jab.
It's over there in Tarrant County.
Yeah.
Community college.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, anyways, don't get me going. You're going to get me going. So they have a fear agenda. Be afraid. They want you afraid. Be afraid of their biological warfare agents. Be afraid of their fake pandemic. Where are the bodies piled in the streets? Be afraid of the military police. Be afraid of the IRS. What they do is they assault you with that minor estate. And once you understand what's going on, you can break it off in their ass. In the Bible, there's all sorts of scriptures saying, fear not. And fear, what fear is false evidence appearing real. It's an acronym, false evidence appearing real. Hospitals are full of sorcerers peddling their pharmaceuticals. See, this is Tomlin's Law Dictionary. Religious houses. Houses set apart for pious uses. Okay, remember, a use is a usufruct, right? Such as monasteries, churches, and hospitals. Okay? These are Satanists is what they are. Okay? And you go to a hospital, I mean, if I get run over by a truck, I'll probably wind up in a hospital, but I'm going to get out of there as quick as I possibly can, I tell you, because they're not interested in curing anybody in there. You know, in my opinion, they want you to turn up dead so they can collect some money. And it's for the exercise of religion. It's also called hospitaliers. And again, a use is a usufruct. This is Tomlin's Law Dictionary again, 1835 edition. Yes, Jason.
So the hospitals are also, I believe, called foundries, right? Where you can drop a baby off, right? So when you have a baby in a hospital, they found this.
I've actually heard, somebody told me that it was in my comments on my YouTube video, on the one that I uploaded. It said that they had been told somewhere that a delivery room was a port of entry. That's military for sure. Okay. Anyways, so contraforum collationis, a writ that lay where a man have given lands in perpetual alms to lay houses of religion, and so it's or to a warden or master of a hospital. Okay, so again, this is all religious organizations. Hospitalers, okay, were knights of a religious order, so called because they built a hospital at Jerusalem. That's Tomlin's Law Dictionary again. Maison Dieu, a house of God, a monastery, religious house, or hospital. The minor estate securities are created by hospitals. That's where it's done. Okay? These people are Satanists. A usufruct is a type of trust, and there's a convention on the law applicable to trusts and their recognition concluded on the 1st of July, 1985, entered into force on the 1st of January, 1992, under the Hague Conference of Private International Law. Remember, that's private international law. That all falls under the Roman cult. That's why it's private. There's also a Hague Convention concerning the international administration of the estates of deceased persons. That's why they want you to turn up dead, so they can pillage all the fake money in there and use it to pay off the national debt. Any person who pays or delivers property to the holder of the certificate drawn up and where necessary recognized in accordance with this convention shall be discharged unless it proved that the person acted in bad faith. So it's a death certificate is what they're talking about. The Hague Convention concerning the international administration of the estates of deceased persons concluded on the 2nd of October 1973. Article 23, any person who has acquired assets of the estate from the holder of a certificate drawn up and where necessary recognized in accordance with this convention shall, unless it's proved that he acted in bad faith, be deemed to have acquired them from a person who have power to dispose of them. And this convention shall apply even if the deceased died before its entry into force. So it's retroactive. So how do you think they pay for all these wars? Okay, think about it. Why do you think it's perpetual wars? They want people to turn up dead so they can steal all fake money in that minor estate. They say that, I don't know, but they say that the hospital creates a bond that's worth like $4 million when your baby's born. So your baby is born into slavery. That's what's happening. Yes.
Yeah, under maritime law, whenever you have a baby, it's considered maritime immorality product because baby's coming out of the water, so just like a ship would come to the dock.
Right.
So then the doctor signs the birth certificate.
Right.
And it goes into the security.
Right. Yes.
The mom also informs, all right, which was an
Yeah.
informant do.
Yeah,
Look
exactly.
someone up, right?
Exactly.
There's about 6 days between the date you're born and the registrar date,
Yeah.
and that's when they create the name in all caps and you thrust you into commerce.
So the banksters all operate in private international law, which is Roman law. Securities are fake money, that's Roman law. It all falls under Roman law. Usufruct. It all falls under Roman law. My contact information, my blog is sovereigntyinternational.wordpress.com. My website is sovereigntyinternational.fyi. My email address is engineerwin@yahoo.com. My YouTube profile is Sovereign Living. My Facebook community page, I deleted it due to censorship by Facebook. My private group on Facebook is being deleted. Quite frankly, I haven't been to Facebook in months, if not years. I have no interest in going there. I would like to delete those groups, but they won't let you delete them unless you ban everybody off of the group first, and there's like 17,000 people on the group. And so I just, Facebook is profiting from my hard work is what's happening. Anyways, don't get me going. I ought to sue them. My pre-list private group is Administrating Your Public Servants. My Google private group is Administrating Your Public Servants. Follow me on Steemit at Sovereignty International. I've got a how-to subscription channel called Sovereignty International that's got my exclusive videos. YouTube actually took my channel down twice. I don't know how many of you know this. They took it down twice. The first time there was no strikes against it. The second time there was actually... They took down 4 of my videos and gave me 3 strikes and took it down. And both times I responded the same way. I said, you're engaged in multiple felonies. You're violating my rights under the color of law. You're conspiring to threaten, coerce, injure, intimidate me in the free exercise of my rights. You're assaulting me with your Satanism, with your fear agenda, and you're subjecting me to your war crimes with your taking reprisals against me for my political beliefs. And your forced medical experiment. I'm going to sue your butt off. All your executive officers and board of directors are personally liable in their private capacity. Don't think I don't know what to do because I've been to the U.S. Supreme Court 5 times. You're next. And 15 minutes later, my channel's back up. It's amazing how that works. So anyways, but they have taken my videos, some of my videos down, and they don't even give me a strike anymore. They just take it down. And so... all of those videos and other ones are on this HowTube channel, on this HowTube subscription channel, and you can go and watch them there. But it's $9.99 a month. We'll talk about that later. I've also got Rumble, and I'm on True Social, and I've got a group on True Social called Sovereignty International, and I got Twitter to reinstate my account. So I'm Engineer Win on X, which is formerly Twitter. So Roman law, civil law, Roman civil law are convertible phrases meaning the same system of jurisprudence, that rule of action which every particular nation, commonwealth, or city has established peculiarly for itself, more properly called municipal law. So think about it. That's Black's Law Dictionary, 4th edition. Think about it. Why do you think they call it the rules of civil procedure? Okay, it's all Roman law. Okay, Roman law is everywhere. I've got a set of books called Roman Law in America, and it talks about negotiable instruments, talks about mortgages, talks about all the stuff that you see going on nowadays. If you try to take control of any securities, you're submitting yourself to regulations, okay? That's a contract, okay? Some people think that they can get control of that thing. I wouldn't. And if you want to do it, knock yourself out, that's all satanic. You're literally getting yourself in a contract with the devil, in my opinion. A slave is property. If you're volunteering for slavery by trying to get control of those securities, you're literally in a contract with the devil. If you want to go before equity, okay, all these courts are courts of equity. They're martial law courts. Everything's martial law. That's why the judge wears a military uniform. That black robe is a military uniform. And so if you want to get a remedy, you got to have clean hands. And if you're sitting there trying to take advantage of that, then you don't have clean hands. And Vince, he went, and I saw him, and he was making a good law argument, and then he went and brought out the birth certificate and he said how he got it authenticated. And the judge looked at him, and that was probably a good judge, because most judges wouldn't say anything. They'd play stupid and rule against you, and you wonder what happened. But this judge said to him, "You're nuts. You need your head examined." And if you look at Title 1, Section 1 of U.S. Code, it said, "Incompos mentis" is insane. And so he was telling that judge, telling Vince, that he didn't know what he was talking about. And so anyways, you got to have clean hands. You cannot participate in a fraud. It's a fraud. It's a lie. And that's where you have to go with it. Anyways, the clean hands doctrine. The principle applies that a party cannot seek equitable relief or assert an equitable defense if that party has violated an equitable principle such as good faith. Such a party is described as having unclean hands. Okay? You got to have clean hands. And that's Black's Law Dictionary, 8th edition. Equitable defense. A defense formally available in a court of equity. Okay? And all of these admiralty courts you see nowadays. In England, they had courts of chancery. Okay? And a court of chancery was a court of equity. And here they combined them all into one. And so you have to have clean hands if you want to get a remedy in court. Every corporation, for all its purposes, is an agency of the bitch. Well, it's now the son of a bitch. And that's the Government Corporation Operation Act of Canada. Okay, so this is the same everywhere. You got to understand, this is the International Monetary Fund. All of this stuff, it's all the same everywhere. This is Canadian Ownership and Control Determination Act. Section 2, owned means subject to the regulations. If you're subject to the regulations, you are a slave. You're owned. This is Article 4, Section 3, Clause 2. We already talked about this. Congress shall have power to dispose of and make all needful rules and regulations respecting the territory or other property belonging to the United States. If you're subject to the regulations, you are property. You are a slave. A U.S. citizen is other property belonging to the United States. Corporation shall be deemed to include any company, trust, so-called Massachusetts trust. It's listing a lot of these. This actually has two parts of this definition. Corporation shall be deemed to include any company, trust, so-called Massachusetts trust or association, incorporated or unincorporated, which is organized to carry on business for its own profit or that of its members, and has shares of capital or capital stock or certificates of interest. And then it's got the same definition, except it doesn't have shares of capital or capital stock or certificates of interest. So the second one is the minor estate. Think about it. That's exactly what it is. It's talking about other things. It would include the minor estate. The term United States business means United States citizen. Okay, a U.S. citizen is a corporation of some sort. It's the minor estate is a U.S. citizen. We therefore decline to overrule the opinion of Chief Justice Marshall. We hold that the District of Columbia is not a state within Article 3 of the Constitution. In other words, cases between citizens of the district and those of the states were not included in the catalog of controversies over which Congress could give jurisdiction to the federal courts by virtue of Article 3. In other words, Congress has exclusive legislative jurisdiction over citizens of Washington, District of Columbia, U.S. citizens, and through their plenary power, that's dictatorship, folks, through their plenary power nationally covers those citizens, even when in one of the several states, as though the district expands for the purpose of regulating its citizens wherever they go throughout the states of the Union. And this is National Mutual Insurance Company of the District of Columbia versus Tidewater Transfer Company, U.S. Supreme Court, 1948. So if you're a U.S. citizen, you're in the District of Columbia. Okay, why do you think all of these courts have zip codes? Okay, we're going to go through that here in a minute. Standing, state, condition, compare, estate. Okay, standing has to do with an estate. A corporation has no standing as a citizen outside the jurisdiction where it's created. A corporation's a citizen, citizen's a corporation. If they're assaulting you with their U.S. citizen slave, then you are in the District of Columbia. Law of status. the category of law dealing with personal or non-proprietary right, whether in rem or in personam. It is 1-3 departments of civil law. Okay, remember we're talking this all civil law. They're bringing the District of Columbia outside 10 Mile Square in violation of Article 1, Section 8, Clause 17. That's what they're doing. And Article 1, Section 8, Clause 17 says to exercise exclusive legislation in all cases whatsoever over such district not exceeding 10 miles square, as made by session of particular states in the acceptance of Congress, become the seat of government of the United States, and to exercise like authority over all places purchased by the consent of the legislature, in which the same shall be for the erection of forts, magazines, arsenals, dockyards, or other needful buildings. That's talking about federal enclaves. You know how many federal enclaves are in Texas? 0. Plenary jurisdiction. Remember, National Mutual Insurance Company versus Tidewater Transfer Company talked about plenary jurisdiction, plenary authority. A court's full and absolute power over the subject matter and the parties in the case. And the parties. Absolute power. Plenary, full, complete, entire. It's a dictatorship. Plenary is a dictatorship. Plenary. Courts of admiralty and ecclesiastical courts, okay? These are all, they're admiralty and ecclesiastical, okay? This is all the Roman cult, okay? You got to understand that. This is the Roman cult. You see it in the courts all over the place. All these military uniforms. That's all the Roman cult. And these wars are satanic blood sacrifices to the Roman cult god Baal. It's exactly what's going on, folks. Plenary power. Now, this is Wikipedia, and that's not exactly the best source, but they're quoting the same thing as Legal Information Institute, which is Cornell Law School, which is a very good source. Plenary power or plenary authority is complete and absolute power to take action on a particular issue with no limitations. It's derived from the Latin term plenus. And then Legal Information Institute, complete power over a particular area with no limitations. It's a dictatorship. Why do you think they do some of the stuff they do? They make it up as they go along because they can. It's a dictatorship. The term is often used to describe the commerce power of Congress. Under the Commerce Clause, Article 1, Section 8, Clause 3, Congress is granted full power over interstate commerce. The court has found that states are not able to pass laws affecting interstate commerce without the permission of Congress. This is Article 6, Clause 2 of the Constitution. This is where you get them, folks. This Constitution and the laws of the United States, which shall be made in pursuance thereof, and all treaties made or which shall be made under authority of the United States, shall be the supreme law of the land. Law of the land is very important because that's talking about common law, which goes back to the Magna Carta. And the judges in every state shall be bound thereby, anything in the Constitution or laws of any state to the contrary notwithstanding. So I don't care what your state codes say. You have an oath to the supreme law of the land, and I demand a trial by jury as required by Article 3. And if you stand your ground on that, they'll find a way to make it go away. That's what happens every time. People that stand their ground, the case disappears. If you try to take control of any securities to change the status of the minor estate, you're volunteering yourself for the Commerce Clause dictatorship. That's what you're doing, folks. Status is Roman law. At common law, status means nothing. It's a trap. You will not have clean hands. The Bible says to trust not in the arm of flesh. Jesuits and their dupes are peddling this stuff. Some of my other videos, Bankster Thieves Playlist, Roman Cult Playlist, Bankrupt Corporate So-Called Governments, Bar Members 1 through 8, Do-It-Yourself How Not to Volunteer for the Selective Service in the Draft, Martial Laws Here, Do-It-Yourself No Income Tax, Do-It-Yourself Free Mail, Do-It-Yourself Kangaroo Courts 1 through 28, Canada Border Pigs Playlist, Bar Members and Their Satanic Connections Playlist. This is the same stuff that precipitated the War of Independence. This is taken from the Causes and Necessities for Taking Up Arms, 1775. Statutes have been passed extending the courts of admiralty and vice admiralty far beyond their ancient limits for depriving us of the accustomed and inestimable privilege of trial by jury. The War of Independence was fought over the denial of trial by jury. And people don't ask for it, they don't insist on it. It happens every day. Everybody in prison was sold into slavery. These people are Satanists. They ought to get their necks stretched. If we were Christians, that's what would be happening. In cases affecting both life and property, to supersede the course of common law, instead thereof to publish and order the use and exercise of the law martial. So martial law supersedes common law. But you can be in the common law jurisdiction. If you're a corporation, you're under martial law. It's a dictatorship. But you don't have to be. You have to assert your rights. That's why I file the felony criminal complaints for involuntary servitude, violating my rights under the color of law. I just start mailing them out by the box. And for altering fundamentally the form of government established by charter, we saw the misery to which despotism would reduce us. That's dictatorship. The founding fathers understand that. Most of the brain dead idiots out here don't have a clue. McCullough versus Maryland. All subjects over which the sovereign power of the state extends are objects of taxation, but those over which it does not extend are exempt from taxation. This proposition may also be pronounced as self-evident. It's obvious. The sovereignty of the state exists by its authority or its permission. That's 1819, McCullough versus Maryland. And here's actually the same definition, but it's got some stuff added to it, because that one, actually I should just delete this one. But that's where it started at. That's what I had. And then I found this recently. And it's all in there. The sovereignty of a state extends to everything which exists by its own authority or is introduced by its permission. But does it extend to those means which are employed by Congress to carry into execution powers conferred on that body by the people of the United States? This is why they have to use the Commerce Clause. They are forced to use the Commerce Clause, and it's felonies. Does it extend to those means which are employed by Congress to carry into execution powers conferred on that body by the people of the United States? We think it demonstrable that it does not. Those powers are not given by the people of a single state. They are given by the people of the United States to a government whose laws made in pursuance of the Constitution are declared to be supreme. Remember, Article 6, Clause 2. Consequently, the people of a single state cannot confer a sovereignty which will extend over them. I went and filed something for Becky here recently, and the lawyers, it was a demand for your statutory and delegated authority to order her to do anything. And notice they didn't provide any statutory or delegated authority, did they? All they did is scream and yell and jump up and down. So that tells you they don't have any statutory. But that fake judge went and signed that, didn't he? So we're going to go after him. Anyways, the people of a single state cannot confer a sovereignty which will extend over them. That's why they have to use the Commerce Clause. That's the only way they can do it. The sovereignty of the United States resides in the people, and Congress cannot invoke the sovereignty of the people to override their will as declared in the Constitution. The state citizen is immune from any and all government attacks and procedure absent contract. Actually, according to McCullough versus Maryland, there can't be a contract. Think about it. Under McCullough versus Maryland, they can't, because we're not competent to confer that authority to them. Every man is independent of all laws except those prescribed by nature. He's not bound by any institutions formed by his fellow men without his consent. A couple maxims of law. And see, that's why I tell them in all my paperwork that my fourth great uncle is a guy by the name of Will Livingston, who ratified the Constitution for New Jersey. That's my fourth great uncle. And that's fatal to him, because the power which is derived cannot be greater than that from which it is derived. Their authority comes from me. They got nothing to say to me. Nor does the conclusion by any means suppose the superiority of the judicial to the legislative power. It only supposes that the power of the people is superior to both. That one's not a maxim. There's a maxim coming up, though. Is no civil law can violate right of blood. And that's, again, because my fourth great uncle ratified the Constitution for New Jersey. My opinion is, and has long been, that the mayor and aldermen of a city corporation or the president directors of a bank or the president directors of a railroad company or other similar corporations are the true parties that sue and are sued as trustees and representatives of the constantly changing stockholders. A corporation, therefore, being not a natural person but a mere creature of the mind, invisible and intangible, cannot be a citizen of a state or the United States and cannot fall within the terms and power of the above mentioned article, and can therefore neither plead nor be impleaded in the courts of the United States. Balzac versus people of Puerto Rico. The United States District Court is not a true United States court established under Article 3 to administer the judicial power of the United States, but was created in virtue of the sovereign congressional faculty granted under Article 4, Section 3. Right? Making all needful rules and regulations respecting the territory or the property belonging to the United States. So it's for their slaves. Anybody that's in the federal court is a slave. The interesting thing is, though, this is Book 21 of Corpus Juris Secundum. A court can be a court of general jurisdiction for some purposes and a court of limited jurisdiction for other purposes. When, therefore, a court of general jurisdiction proceeds under a special statute, it becomes a court of limited jurisdiction for the purpose of such proceeding, okay? Well, all of these courts, they only operate under statutes. So they're always going to be an inferior court of limited jurisdiction. Accordingly, where a court of general jurisdiction undertakes to carry out a special power, a decision made in exercise of such power is treated as a ruling of a court of limited jurisdiction, and the presumption applicable to a court of general jurisdiction that it acted within the scope of this jurisdiction does not apply. And that's Book 20 of American Jurisprudence, 2nd edition. It's familiar law that when a special statutory authority in derogation of common law is conferred on courts of general jurisdiction, such a court of general jurisdiction becomes quad hoc, a court of inferior or limited jurisdiction. So they're always in derogation of common law. Okay? They're always in derogation of common law. They follow the statutes. The word administrative is synonymous with the word executive. Okay, so they're administrative courts, they're executive courts. The word administrative connotes of or pertains to administration, especially management, as by managing or conducting or superintending the execution, application, or conduct of persons or things. Thus, administrative acts are those acts which are necessary to be done to carry out legislative policies and purposes already declared by the legislative body. In fact, it is common to use the two words in tandem. What is called proclaiming martial law is no law at all, merely for the sake of public safety and circumstances of great emergency, setting aside all law and acting under military power. Okay, so that's what we have now. That's why they have to pass statutes for common law offenses. That's why all statutes are edicts under martial law. That's why they have to, if you want to go after somebody for a murder, it's murder under United States Code or murder under Texas Penal Code, okay? That's the only way you can do it. We can't even begin to count the number of times judges, lawyers, and statesmen have said there isn't any common law anymore, it's been replaced by statutes. They'd be more truthful if they said there isn't any common law anymore, it's been replaced by martial law. And that's the non-ratification of the 14th Amendment by Judge A.H. Ellett of the Utah Supreme Court in the case Diet versus Turner. So you have to understand, common law is here. When we, the people, start operating our common law courts, it'll be here. And we can go out and assert it. And the sheriff, we can issue an order. Cliff High talks about this. He said that by the end of this year, there's going to be common law courts operating all over the place in this country. And the common law juries will issue orders to the military sheriff, okay? They're all military. Will issue a writ to the military sheriff to go and arrest somebody, and he'll go out and do it. And we'll put him on trial. And, you know, I think we're going to see some people getting their necks stretched, quite frankly, because there's treason going on all over the place. But that's not up to me. I'm glad it's up to a common law jury. But I think that's what's going to happen. I'd like to see Fauci get his neck stretched. There's no common law offenses against the United States, only those acts which Congress has forbidden with penalties for disobedience of its command or crimes. Minor estate is derogation of common law. It's inferior court of limited jurisdiction by definition. Under Texas law, no or act of omission is a crime unless made so by statute. The legislature may create an offense and in the same enactment provide exceptions to its application. Under a military dictatorship, there is no law. That's why they're required to pass statutes or edicts for common law crimes like murder and assault. This creates civil law, which creates a democracy. It's mob rule, is what happens. Under a military dictatorship, you have a democracy. Democracy is international law, so you always challenge jurisdiction. That's always where you go with it. They lose subject matter jurisdiction when they deny due process. Due process is common law. I have exclusive content available on HowTube. It's $9.99 a month for videos plus unlimited email consultations. I'm not a liar. Well, I'm in an attorney. No, I'm not a liar. But I can't tell you what I would do and where to find the forums. The only power these New World Order Satanists have over us is through fraud and deception, as my agenda is to expose it for all our benefit, but I cannot fight all the battles. Some of my exclusive content is an Arlington private information share, land deed training, estoppel certificates training. There's actually a couple of the land deed, 2 or 3 land deed training videos. Foreclosure estoppel certificates training, corporate denial training, toll roads notice and demand training, invoice training, notice of void judgment training, revocation of signature training, third-party witness training, federal habeas corpus training, revocation of voter registration, criminal complaint training. There's about 3 of those, and I need to do some more. Matter of fact, there's one that's not exclusive that I just uploaded to YouTube on a criminal complaint I did against Janet Yellen. Lawsuit training, I got 1 video on that, and there needs to be more. Other training requests, I'm open to any requests, but the only thing is that it's got to be something I haven't already done, and it's got to be something that I can do, you know, based on what my channel's about. Northeast private information share videos. I need to do, there's going to be one for a petition for writ of mandamus, because if you build a case well in the challenge to jurisdiction, you can go to the Court of Appeals with the petition for writ of mandamus, and if you build a good case, the Court of Appeals will dismiss it and will notify the lower court, which is exactly what you want done. The videos taken down by YouTube are going to be in my exclusive content. First views and new uploads. All forms, files, and other instructions are available for free. Link to my videos are on my website. All exclusive content is going to be on HowTube, and you can buy a subscription there. I have no control over HowTube, so you can't send me $9.99 a month because I won't be able to. I can't do it on HowTube. You have to do it. HowTube handles the billing and all of that stuff. Now we're wondering about the zip codes. Okay, zip code means District of Columbia. This is found in the Code of Law for the District of Columbia, 31 Stat 1190. The said Supreme Court shall divide the said district into 10 subdistricts and prescribe the place in each subdistrict where the justice thereof shall have his office for the transaction of business, and may change the boundaries of subdistricts and the location of offices of justices therein from time to time, as the volume and convenience of business may require. You know, it says in the Declaration of Independence, it says, when a long train of abuses evinces a design to reduce us to absolute despotism. And this happened in 1901. This didn't start yesterday, okay? This, you know, it started probably from the minute the Constitution was ratified, okay? The Civil War is a good example of stuff that was going on that wound us up in this situation that we're in, where it's basically a dictatorship if you don't know what's going on and how to deal with it. All corporations are in a zip code. All government offices are in a zip code. All government offices are corporations. United States Postal Service is a corporation domiciled in the District of Columbia. This is 31 Stat 1190 to 1191. Should a suit be brought against any party or corporation in any district in which he or it does not reside or hold business, and a plea to the jurisdiction on this account be filed by said defendant, the party or corporation interposing such plea shall disclose under oath the district in which he or it should have been sued. So again, all zip codes are in the District of Columbia. In the Code of Law for the District of Columbia, Chapter 18 is a huge section about corporations. Article 1, Section 8, Clause 3, to regulate commerce with foreign nations and among the several states and with the Indian tribes. Congress has jurisdiction over corporations. It's granted in the Constitution. When you incorporate into the government. That's what you do. That's why it's called incorporating. Everything subject to regulations is government property. A corporation is a franchise from the government. My book, Trump, it's back there, is now available. Trump, a True American Patriot or Not. Mike Blackwell asked me to write the book, and it took me about 6 weeks because all I did is I took a lawsuit, manipulated it, and turned it into the book. And then Mike had to babysit me for 6 months to get it ready to publish. So that's why I put him on the book, because he babysat me through the process. But I wrote the book. He hired a company to help us with the publishing, and they wrote the back. And I think they nailed it here. It says, in Trump, a True American Patriot or Not, Glenn Pern and Mike Blackwell reveal the depths of corruption, deceit, and manipulation infesting our political system for hundreds of years, regardless of political affiliation. Read the hard evidence that exposes how our elected officials sold Americans into slavery. Understand the Founding Fathers' true intent when they formed a Republican form of government. Discover the influence of the satanic Roman cult on our politicians and political system. Does Donald Trump want to transfer power back to we the people? In Trump, you will see the great battle that is upon us. And they nailed it there, I'll tell you, and it is a great battle. You can order the book from Amazon.com, or you can get it right here. This says 40, and some of these are marked 45. I'll let you have them for 40 if you want one. But the price is going up. Matter of fact, I think I'll just go ahead and change that to 45. If you order from my website, you can get it autographed. And these ones here are autographed. If you order from Amazon, they don't give you autographed books. If you want the book autographed, you got to order from my website.
Is that 45 coffee beans? What is that?
There you go. Okay, so do you want to know the origin of this deep state? The book is 99% provable facts. Okay, I use court cases, law dictionary definitions, international treaties to prove everything that's in there. But there is a little bit of opinion. And so talks about the deep state and who's behind it, what Trump is dealing with, basically. You want to know why it's called the Trump administration? There's a reason for everything. There's nothing that's by accident in the law. Do you want to know what an administration is? You want to know how Trump came to be president? You know he was invited, right? You ever heard of Jerome Corsi? Jerome Corsi is a guy that lives up in the Northeast. He's got a YouTube channel. He's written a bunch of books. He's got a PhD in political science from Harvard. Really smart guy. Anyways, there's a YouTube video where he says that in 2015, 5 generals came to see him and they said they were going to overthrow Obama. And he said, well, you can do that if you want, but you might want to go talk to Donald Trump first. 3 months later, he gets a phone call. They decided not to overthrow Obama because Donald Trump had agreed to run for president. So my opinion is that the entire Trump administration is a giant military psyop, and I think it still continues. But again, at the end of the day, the buck stops here. We all have to start taking care of business. And he needs to know that we're behind them. So anyways, do you want to know who owns Congress? Why do you think Pelosi would get up there and say we can't read this bill until after we pass it? It's because she's owned. Think about it. Do you want to know why they're called law enforcement officers? Do you want to know how you have become a slave? The slavery is forcing to work for the government for nothing. Are you paying taxes? You're a slave. Do you want to know what the root cause of the War of Independence was? It's the same thing that's going on right now. Do you want to know why every president goes to visit the pimp? Well, I meant the Pope. No, I meant the pimp on their first international trip. It's in the book. So I already talked about Mike Blackswell and Jerome Corsi and about 95% provable facts. Howard Hughes, you know how he was hiding out? Anybody remember Howard Hughes? He was hiding out all the time. Well, at the time I wrote the book, it's my opinion that most of these billionaires, did you notice how Bill Gates went to see Warren Buffett and all of a sudden Warren Buffett went and donated $5 billion to the Gates Foundation? You remember that? Well, so that's the kind of shit that goes on, okay? And so these New World Order crowd, they go and visit billionaires and you get told you're going to go along with our program and you're going to turn up dead. And so as since then, I've heard that Warren Buffett and Bill Gates have had a falling out, which is good. But meanwhile, Warren Buffett still gave $5 billion to the Gates Foundation, didn't he? Anyways, so all of these billionaires get approached. At the time, that's what I said about Howard Hughes, and that's why I thought he was hiding out. Since then, I saw a David Wilcock video. And a David Wilcock video says that after World War II, Howard Hughes, we all know that he was a major industrialist, and he built the Spruce Goose, and we used to be in Long Beach Harbor. I heard they moved it. But he had airlines, he had contractors, he was a major supplier for the war effort. Anyways, after World War II, he got blackballed. Okay, remember Eisenhower said, beware of the military-industrial complex? Well, Howard Hughes got blackballed. He couldn't get any military contracts. So he went and got some young ladies to go and sleep with the military-industrial complex type and find out from pillow talk what was going on. And that's when they found out that they're going to do what they're doing right now. They're going to have a fake pandemic, and they're going to have wars, and they're going to kill a bunch of us off so they can take over the world. And so Howard Hughes had actually published a manual and several manuals, I guess, and Kennedy was implementing them when they killed Kennedy. Remember, Kennedy said that 7 days before he wanted to expose this secret combination, and also Kennedy circulated $6 billion worth of U.S. Treasury notes. That's like telling the bankster thieves you're done here. And so they killed him. They killed his brother. They killed a bunch of other people. So that's why Howard Hughes, I guess, was hiding out, because he figured he was next. Anyways, Trump, same thing. Okay, I don't know. I started out in 1976 working on helicopters. And so I kind of know a little bit about how helicopters work. And I can tell you that, well, first of all, there was a helicopter crash in 1984. It was one of Trump's helicopters. And what happened was 3 of his executives were on it. He was supposed to have been on it. He canceled it out at the last minute. And that helicopter crashed for a reason that helicopters don't crash. Okay? I know helicopters crash for a lot of reasons. I've worked on them. I've seen helicopter crashes. And they crash for a lot of reasons, but they don't crash because the blades fall off. Okay, and that's what happened with that helicopter. The blades fell off. And so that tells me that, and I think that Trump knew, he had his own private security when he was in the White House. He didn't trust the Secret Service, and I don't blame him. And so he had his own private security. So anyways, in reality, they're not after me. They're after you. I'm just in the way. So the War of Independence was caused by the Sestakevi Act of 1666. Okay, that's what they were doing. That's what caused all of this stuff, caused by the crown imposing the minor estate on the colonists. And the Roman cult is the source of all of it. This is the Declaration of Independence. And if you think about it, the Declaration of Independence is a list of grievances. And so there's a preamble and a postamble on the list of grievances. This is, he's endeavored to prevent the population of these states for the purpose of obstructing the laws of naturalization of foreigners, refusing to pass others, to encourage their migrations hither. Gee, that sounds like open borders. Doesn't that sound like open borders? He's obstructed the administration of justice by refusing his assent to laws for establishing judiciary powers. Gee, that sounds like kangaroo courts. He's directed a multitude of new offices and sent hither swarms of officers to harass our people and eat our substance. Gee, that sounds like military police everywhere. Code enforcers, I mean, they are everywhere too. Every time you turn around, there's someone somewhere else. He's affected to render the military independent of and superior to the civil law. That sounds like martial law. He's combined with others who subject us to a jurisdiction foreign to our Constitution, unacknowledged by our laws, which is martial law, giving his assent to their acts of pretended legislation. That's color of law. Think about it. That's what that is. For protecting them by a mock trial. I mean, that's what they do nowadays. If you're someone that they like, they make sure that you get off. And if you're someone they don't like, then you spend the rest of your life in their jail. Denials of due process. If there's anywhere you'll get your rights violated, it's in the so-called courts. From punishment for any murders they should commit on the inhabitants of these states. For transporting us beyond seas to be tried for pretended offenses. Gee, that sounds like bringing the District of Columbia outside of 10 Mile Square. For abolishing the free system of English laws in a neighboring province, establishing therein an arbitrary government, dictatorship, enlarging its boundaries so as to render an example and fit instrument for introducing the same absolute rule, dictatorship, into these colonies, for imposing taxes on us without our consent. Okay, that's martial law too. Anyways, for taking away our charters, abolishing our most valuable laws, altering fundamentally the forms of government, that's all part of military dictatorship. For suspending our own legislatures and declaring them invested with power to legislate for us in all cases whatsoever, that's dictatorship. Abdicated government here by declaring war against us, declaring us out of his protection and making war against us. That's trading with the enemy act. Okay, you're the enemy. You got to understand that. If you're in their court, you are the enemy.
Belligerent.
Yeah. He's destroyed the lives of our people, populating the jails with commercial transactions, selling people into slavery. This is the same stuff. Texas has a bigger percentage of people in jail than the worst communist dictatorships. More than China, more than the Soviet Union.
Somebody we used to know that we don't really hang around anymore said of all the places that collect money, all the different taxes and the IRS and the city and counties, all that collect money off people's trusts, the DOJ, and they collect, the Department of Justice collects supposedly $1 trillion a day off people's trusts.
Now, that wouldn't surprise me, but that's hearsay.
Hearsay.
Yeah. Anyways, this is George III, chapter 12, 1778, 2 years after the Declaration of Independence. Whereas taxation by the Parliament of Great Britain for the purpose of raising a revenue in His Majesty's colonies, provinces, and plantations in North America has been found by experience to occasion great uneasiness and disorders. Well, no shit, Batman. It's all commercial transactions, it's all business. Okay, they're nothing but a bunch of thieves. Don't get me going. That from and after the passing of this act, the King and Parliament of Great Britain will not impose any duty, tax, or assessment, whatever, payable in any of the colonies, provinces, or plantations in North America or the West Indies, except only such duties as it may be expedient to impose for the regulation of commerce. Yet still it was found difficult to set bounds to ecclesiastical ingenuity. Okay, this is the Roman cult, folks. For when they were driven out of all their former holes, they devised a new method of conveyance by which the lands were granted not to themselves directly, but to nominal fiefs to the use of the religious houses. That's usufruct. Thus distinguishing between the possession and the use, and receiving the actual profits, while a season of the land remained in the nominal fief was held by the courts of equity, then under the direction of the clergy, they're still under the direction of the clergy, to be bound in conscience to account to assesticate use for the rents and emoluments of the estate. That's taxes, folks. And it is to these inventions that our practitioners are indebted for the introduction of uses and trusts, the foundation of modern conveyancing. That's property taxes. I mean, that's all taxes, really. And this is taken from Tomlin's Law Dictionary, 1835 edition, volume 2, under the definition of mort main. So the minor estate is created by the hospitaliers. When you turn up dead, they get to pillage the Treasury direct account and use it to pay off the national debt. They use the minor estate Treasury direct account to pay for your imprisonment. They literally sell you into slavery. He, the prisoner, has as a consequence of his crime not only forfeited his liberty, but all his personal rights except those which the law and its humanity affords him. He is, for the time being, a slave of the state. So what can you do now? Well, I would say, first of all, download IRS Form 15227 and lock the Social Security number. Anytime they give you something to sign, it's forced. If you refuse to sign, they will insert refused, and you signed it. Put without prejudice for a signature. A signature or a subscription includes a mark when the person making the same intended as that such. That's Title I, United States Code, Section 1. United States shall guarantee in every state or republican form of government a well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of the free state. The right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. That's really what it comes down to, and I think it's what it's going to come down to. Necessary, this is the only place in the Constitution that the word necessary is used. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel. Don't forget to follow me on Steemit. Don't forget to like this video. Don't forget to click the bell next to the subscribe button so you're notified there's a new upload. Don't forget to vote and make your comments on Steemit. That's the front page of my channel. The subscribe button's already clicked or it'll be red. The bell needs to be clicked so you're notified. So, Patrick Henry witnessed a man flogged to death for refusing to take a license. And he coined the phrase, give me liberty or give me death. A license is a contract. So again, it's always, remember, imposing taxes, it's all commerce, okay? They're nothing but a bunch of thieves. Pay me the tax or I'll blow your brains out. That's what these Satanists do, okay? The corrupt Star Chamber courts of England required defendants to have counsel. Star Chamber stood for swiftness and arbitrary power. It's a limitation on the common law. Remember, we talked about derogation of common law. If they're talking about, if you have to get permission not to have a lawyer, it's a Star Chamber. This is another part of that same case. Although the right to self-representation is not a license to abuse the dignity of the courtroom, neither is it a license for the court to impose upon the defendant its own choice of counsel. The defendant's Sixth Amendment right to choose counsel or to proceed pro se is an essential part of his right to a fair trial. There's two ways to conquer and enslave a nation. One is by sword and the other is by debt. When acting to enforce a statute and subsequent amendments to the present date, the judge of municipal court is acting as an administrative officer and not in a judicial capacity. Courts administrating, remember we talked about administrating, or enforcing statutes do not act judicially, but merely ministerially. That's why they don't put a court seal on it, because it'll never have a court seal on those kinds of rulings, just a judge's signature. Well, he's operating in his private capacity.
It's usually a rubber stamp.
Might be sometimes. I've seen it sometimes that way. But merely acts as an extension, as an agent of the involved agencies, a bought and paid for clerk. It's the accepted rule not in the state courts, but of the federal courts as well, that when a judge is enforcing administrative law, they're described as mere extensions of the administrative agency for superior reviewing purposes, as a bought and paid for clerk. Judges who become involved in enforcement of mere statutes, civil or criminal nature, act as mere clerks of the involved agency. Ministerial officers are competent to receive grants of judicial power from the legislature, their acts in attempting to exercise such powers are necessarily nullities. It's a fake order. There is no jurisdiction, there is no judge. The proceeding is as nothing. Such has been the law from the days of Marshal Sale. And that's a federal court case quoting U.S. Supreme Court, Bradley versus Fisher, and they're quoting 10 Coke 68, which Coke was in the 1500s. So this is as old as time itself. Judge wears a military uniform. Judge sits there and plays stupid. If you fail to follow some obscure rule or procedure, they sell you into slavery. Everything they do is a fraud and a nullity. The judge has no oath of office to a corporation or a minor estate. Judge works for the state, prosecutor works for the state, police or witness works for the state. The vast majority of the disputes that the police initiate on behalf of their employer are also adjudicated by their employer, where the plaintiff, the judge, the antagonist, the police, the only witness, also the police, all represent the same party. And since no corpus delicti, mens rea, or acts reus can be produced, doesn't technically qualify to be heard according to its own laws. The state, therefore, is indistinguishable from a criminal cartel. But in fact, in a law, such statutes are intended to be applied to those who are here as residents in this state under the Interstate Commerce Clause of the Federal Constitution, under the so-called 14th Amendment. That's not a quote, a direct quote out of that case, that's a summary. But that nails it. Copies of these documents can be found on my website and linked under my recent videos. For a complete set of YouTube videos with private information, shares a DVD with over 100 searchable law dictionaries and other books and forums, contact me privately. A price list is back there. Donations to support this work are appreciated. I prefer gold or silver coin, but as an extremely less desirable alternative, I can accept the military script, the IOUs, the fake money, the Federal Reserve notes, the forced loans, the securities, cash app, gifts, checks, money orders, etc. Send me an email for particulars. This is the 13th Amendment. Neither slavery nor involuntary servitude, except as punishment for a crime, wherein the party shall have been duly convicted, shall exist. And we already read this. He, the prisoner, has as a consequence of his crime not only forfeited his liberty, but all his personal rights except those which the law and its humanity affords him. He is, for the time being, a slave of the state. If we were Christians, we'd be stretching necks over that. If a man be found stealing any of his brethren of the children of Israel and maketh merchandise of him or selleth him, then that thief shall die. Thou shalt put evil away from among you. That's Deuteronomy 24:7. It's time to get unplugged, folks. Rebellion to tyrants is obedience to God. America needs God. Thou shalt have no other gods before me. The New World Order will require that you worship government. This is going on in China right now with the Falun Gong when they're doing their organ harvesting programs. China is killing their property to collect the minor estate treasury direct accounts. That's exactly what's going on. They're making money off of that, paying off the national debt. Tyranny. This is taken from John Locke, True Treaties of Government. It's amazing to me that people don't know this kind of stuff. This should be known to everybody in high school. Tyranny is the exercise of power beyond right, which nobody can have a right to. And this is making use of the power anyone has in his hands, not for the good of those who are under it, but for his own private, separate advantage. When the governor, however entitled, makes not the law, but his will the rule, and his commands and actions are not directed to the preservation of the properties of his people, but to the satisfaction of his own ambition, revenge, covetousness, or any other irregular passion. 'Tis a mistake to think this fault only in monarchies. Other forms of government are liable to it as well. For wherever the power that is put in any hands for the government of the people and to the preservation of their properties is applied to other ends and made use of to impoverish, harass, or subdue them to arbitrary and irregular commands of those who have it, there it presently becomes tyranny, whether those that use it are one or many. And that's John Locke, Two Treatises of Government, Book 2, Chapter 18, Section 199 and 201. And this is the preamble, part of the preamble of the Declaration of Independence. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. And we'll go to the underlying part, that whenever any form of government becomes destructive to them, it is the right of the people to alter or abolish it, and to institute new government. And then you go to the underlying part further down. But when a long train of abuses and usurpations pursuing invariably the same object evinces a design to reduce them under absolute despotism, that's dictatorship, folks. It is their right, it is their duty to throw off such government. The refusal of King George III to allow the colonies to operate an honest money system, which freed the ordinary man from the clutches of the money manipulators, was probably the prime cause of the revolution. If they could not create money from nothing, there would be no minor estate. In 1913, they created the Federal Reserve, the Internal Revenue Service, the U.S. Department of Commerce, and the U.S. Department of Labor. Kind of convenient. I believe the banking institutions are more dangerous to our liberties than standing armies. If the American people ever allow private banks to control the issue of their currency, first by inflation, then by deflation, the banks and corporations that will grow up around the banks will deprive the people of all property until their children wake up homeless on the continents their fathers conquered. How many people do you see homeless out here nowadays? This is at Edward Mandel House. Very soon, every American will be required to register their biological property in the national system designed to keep track of the people that will operate under the ancient system of pledging. By such methodology, we can compel people to submit to our agenda, which will affect our security as a chargeback for our fiat paper currency. Gee, that sounds like a minor estate. Every American will be forced to register or suffer not being able to work and earn a living. They will be our chattel, and we will hold the security interest over them forever by operation of the law merchant under the scheme of secured transactions. Americans, by unknowingly or unwittingly delivering the bills of lading to us, will be rendered bankrupt and insolvent, forever to remain economic slaves through taxation secured by their pledges. And it goes on. They will be stripped of their rights and given a commercial value designed to make us a profit. And they will be none the wiser, for not one man in a million could ever figure our plans. And if by accident one or two would figure it out, we have in our arsenal plausible deniability. After all, this is the only logical way to fund government, by floating liens and debt to the registrants in the form of benefits and privileges. This will inevitably lead to us huge profits beyond our wildest expectations and leave every American a contributor to this fraud, which we will call social insurance. Without realizing it, every American will insure us for any loss we may incur, and in this manner, every American will unknowingly be our servant, however begrudgingly. The people will become helpless without any hope for their redemption, and we will employ the high office of the president of our dummy corporation to foment this plot against America.
We need to wrap things up.
I'm almost done. I got about 10 more slides. Endless wars are to get you into their killing fields so their banksters can collect the fake money in the Treasury direct accounts. But you can fight for your bankrupt corporation. This is the Normandy invasion alone, okay? And it basically, I'm not going to stay here and read this. There's a summary coming up. According to Britannica.com, there was 135,000 U.S. casualties, 65,000 United Kingdom casualties, 18,000 Canadian casualties, 12,200 French casualties, 550,000 total casualties both sides. If each minor estate had in it $1 million, and they have way more than that, they say they start out with $4 million, times 550 is $550 billion of bankster debt gets paid off. Banksters love those kinds of things, and it's a satanic blood sacrifice to their Roman cult god Baal. Taxes were not raised to carry on wars. Wars were raised to carry on taxes. War is not meant to be won. It's meant to be continuous. They want you dead. Hospitals make all this possible. Hospitals are creating a security to be deposited into the Treasury direct account. Hospitals are acting in fraud. It's corporate greed. Hospitals are selling your babies into slavery. All prisoners were sold into slavery because of the minor estate. The corruption of the courts is because of the minor estate. Lock your social security number. You can do that with IRS Form 15227 or Homeland Security, the IRS website, and have your babies at home. Midwife prepares, this is what happened in and with our babies. The midwife prepares the birth paperwork and gives it to you. You buy the biggest family Bible available, and in the front or back is a section to record family events. You use paperwork, birth paperwork, as evidence and record the birth. You get a notary and make a certified copy of the page in the family Bible. You make a short affidavit announcing the birth of your son or daughter and attach a certified copy as evidence and record it in the county records. This is the U.S. passport application, and it might be hard to see, but this is under proof of citizenship. Right here is some, I highlighted it yellow. The page is already yellow, so it's just a little bit brighter yellow right here. But it says right in there, it says you can use family Bible records for your U.S. passport application. So an early baptismal certificate or a circumcision certificate. So you can use all of that. So this is what we did, is what I did with my son Hunter, is I recorded this document in Pinal County, Arizona, is notice and declaration of birth. And I'm not gonna, you can look that up online if you want. This is gonna be a YouTube video, so you can get the number and you can go to the Pinal County Recorder's website and pull any of the stuff down you want. So we're gonna try and end it here quickly. But so this is what we did for home birth. And I attached this, which I redacted some of it because, so some of it, but this is hospital refused social security card. Refused. See, they put that so it's signed now because my wife, you know, we were both in various stages of learning, and so she didn't. She refused, and they put down refused, which means it's signed. And this is some of the birth paperwork at the Casa Grande Regional Medical Center. Anyways, that's about it. We can, so I would encourage everybody, moms, I mean, do your homework, make sure it's going to be safe, get a competent midwife, and have your babies at home if it's at all possible. And don't let anybody stampede you into doing something you're not comfortable with. So if you really want to do it in a hospital, then do it in a hospital. But really pray about it and make your best decision. Anyways, that's about it.
Thank you.
Thank you.